Hello everyone. So today I'll be talking about extreme risk taking or edge work and why it's so common in emerging adulthood. So the emerging adulthood ages from 18 to 25, and this is kind of a unique development stage because the prefrontal cortex actually fully develops at age 25. So like right during the end of this development stage. And physically you're also like at your peak with your strength, coordination, and recovery. But cognitively, you can think abstractly, but the part of your brain that's responsible for impulse and erratic behavior can still override the prefrontal cortex, which is still being wired up by the myelin, which can create risk, like risk taking. So for the first question, as in why extreme risk taking happens in emerging adulthood. So with the physical side, our bodies are as strong as they'll ever be. Our heart is in pretty good shape, and then we also heal fast. So like if an 18-year-old does a stunt, such as jumping off a building, cliff diving, he might just get an ankle sprain and be pretty fine. But if you're at age 50 and you do the same thing, this could be a life or death scenario, and it'll need deeper medical attention or maybe even surgery. So physically, young adults can afford these risks that older adults cannot, and they also have higher levels of dopamine and sensation seeking, which makes thrilling feel a lot more rewarding. So on the cognitive side, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for things like judgment, weighing consequences, and inhibiting impulses, does not mature until age 25. I mean, it can still change, but the growth kind of really stops at age 25 when it comes to developing. And the limbic system, which processes emotion and reward, is also very, very active, and this actually fully develops around age, I think, 11 to 13, so right around puberty. And the limbic system can be thinking like, oh my God, this is so cool, this is amazing, I want to do this. But the prefrontal cortex could be telling like, you could literally die. And you do realize that, but your limbic system is called the down up way of thinking. It's where like the limbic system can override, your logic and make you do things that it's not really smart, but you do it anyway because you're just not as developed. And then this is also why like emerging adulthoods always bring up things like the fatality rate or statistics on why something is dangerous when you was like a teenager or a kid tries to do something because their brain is developed and they can look at these dangers and be like, okay, this is something that you should not do. But as a kid, you kind of have that like invincibility fable where you just think like, oh my God, that couldn't happen to me, like I'm just not going to die, I'm not stupid like that. That's also what every other person who has been through a terrible interaction has said. So why this stops in the late 20s, early 30s. So most adrenaline seekers stop at around the late 20s, early 30s for two main reasons. One reason is because the prefrontal cortex, like I said earlier, does finish maturing at age 25. So these consequences feel a lot more real, which is what I just talked about. And the same person who, jumped off the cliff at, age 20 may start to think about, kind of their life in the future because this is around the age where people start to like, kind of have an identity that they hold. They start to have, like families. They might have a wife or significant other. And they start to think about like, okay, if I do this, I could be in serious damage. I could like if I get hurt, it does not just affect me. This could affect my kids. It could affect my wife, my parents. You don't really think about that at a young age because you don't really have as much responsibilities. And also, sensation seeking kind of just naturally declines with age. Like what you could do at 20 does not feel the same at 30. And I can speak for myself, like playing a sport at 15 to 16, it felt a lot more fun than it does, as I'm an adult and I'm kind of just doing it for my scholarship money. So for a personal story, so I'll say it was Halloween of last year actually. I was 19. No, I was 20. I'm 21 now. But, we went to Mizzou and, we had a pretty good time. We went to a bar and all that. We were just down there for Halloween. But then, because I don't go to Mizzou, I was kind of sleeping with someone or sleeping with my friends who had like, a kind of like frat house, but it wasn't really a frat. And basically, we went home, but we realized that nobody was there because they were all still out because it was Halloween. They were still having fun. And I looked at my friend like, okay, I really don't want to stay and wait for these dudes. Like, it's super, super cold. And like, I can't just like sit in my car all night. So we decided to make it was like an hour, 30-minute drive home at like 2 in the morning. Mind you, we are so tired that like every time I drive, like every 30 seconds, I just like fall asleep at the wheel and nearly jerk off like the road. And it got so bad to the point where like if I see a cop, I just like, oh my God, I gotta lock in, because if they catch me sleeping at the wheel, that's not really good. But yeah, like that was a pretty dumb thing, and like we knew it was stupid, but because our brain wasn't processing the risk, we didn't think about like what could actually happen. Like I could crash this car and I would be in big trouble. We just didn't think about that because we just didn't care. We let our limbic system override logic because logically we knew that that was stupid, but we just didn't have like there was nothing in our brains telling us that like why wouldn't you do it? I wasn't really thinking about it. I mean, knowing development now, like it makes perfect sense why I would do something like that. And looking back, I learned from it, and I probably won't ever do it again. But that's just like a great example of like times where doing something dumb can override logic. So two other types of risk taking, and whether they can be healthy. I mean, so finally, not all risk taking is like parkour or kayaking. And emerging adults take everyday risks too. So it says social risks, so like speaking up in class, asking someone on a date, or moving to a new city where you don't know anyone. This is a healthy risk because it builds resilience, social connection, and identity. And the potential is harm or like rejection or embarrassment. And this doesn't really hurt you; it actually benefits your growth. And also financial risk, so like investing in education, starting a business, or moving out your parents' house without a huge safety net. This can be healthy if it is calculated. And the risk of debt or failure is real, but in emerging adulthood, it's the best time to take it because you have fewer dependents. You also have more time to recover. And a failed business at 23 can be a life lesson, but when you do that at 43 with an entire family, that is a very bad crisis that you probably can't afford. So yes, risk taking can be beneficial, and healthy risks involve a potential reward that outweighs the harm, and also a chance to learn. And without some risk, an emerging adult never develops competence, confidence, or a sense of who you're going to be as a person. And the key is distinguishing air work that can kill you from from risks that simply stress you.